My name is Daniel Seaton. I'm 32 years old. 3 weeks ago, I walked into my parents' house for Thanksgiving, carrying my grandmother's pecan pie and realized my chair had been removed from the table. 23 relatives were already seated. Crystal glasses, white china, handwritten name cards. My father at the head, my sister glowing beside her husband. 8 months pregnant. No empty seat. Not even a folding chair against the wall. For a second, I thought maybe I'd miscounted. I walked around the table once, twice. 23 names. None of them mine. My mother didn't look surprised when I stopped beside her. She adjusted the centerpiece like this was logistics. Not humiliation. We ran out of room. She said evenly, "You can eat in the kitchen after." After she finally looked at me. Not angry. Not emotional. Just distant. There's no room for disappointments. Daniel. 23 people heard it. No one moved. No one objected. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I set Grandma Ruth's pie down gently on the table, the only person in that house who had ever made space for me without conditions. Then I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out a thick white envelope. I walked to my father and placed it on his plate. Right over the gold-trimmed china he polished every year. "Happy Thanksgiving," I said. My voice didn't shake. "I finally understand why you never looked at me like your son." He stared at the envelope. My mother went pale. The DNA results inside answered a question I've been asking my entire life. I continued. But they also raised a bigger one. I held his eyes. "The report says there's a 0% probability that you're my biological father." Silence swallowed the room whole. And for the first time in 32 years, I wasn't the one standing outside the table anymore. Before I take you back to the beginning to the day this actually started, I need to pause for a second. If you've ever stood in a room full of people who share your last name and still felt like a guest, you know what that silence feels like. If this resonates with you, take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if it genuinely connects. And tell me where you're watching from. What city? What time is it there right now? I read every comment. Now, let me take you back 6 months earlier to the day my grandmother was buried. And the first time I realized something in my family had never been right. 6 months before Thanksgiving. My grandmother Ruth was buried on a gray Tuesday morning that smelled like lilies and floor polish. I arrived an hour early. Grandma used to say, "Early is on time. On time is late." I wanted to help. Carry flowers. Adjust chairs. Do something useful. That had always been my role. My mother was already there. Directing the funeral staff like a project manager, closing a deal. Clipboard in hand. Hair perfect. Voice controlled. "Daniel," she said without looking up. "Stand near the entrance. Greet people." I thought I'd sit with the family. She paused, finally glancing at me. "The front row is for immediate family. People who were close to her." The words landed clean. Precise. Surgical. For the past 5 years, I had driven Grandma to every cardiology appointment. I'd fixed the loose railing on her porch. Sat with her when the hospice nurse explained what comfort care meant. I was the one holding her hand when her breathing changed that last night. I was close to her. I said. My mother's expression didn't shift. Not anger. Not guilt. Just absence. "Victoria is flying in from Chicago," she replied. "She needs the space." You understand. I always understood. The service was beautiful. My older sister Victoria cried gracefully in the front row. Her husband's hand wrapped around hers. My father stared straight ahead. I stood near the guest book at the back, shaking hands with distant relatives who called me David twice before correcting themselves. After the burial, when the crowd thinned, a man in a gray suit approached me. Mid-50s, calm eyes, firm handshake. "Mr. Seaton, I'm Michael Bennett. Your grandmother's attorney?" I nodded. "She left something specifically for you." The words caught me off guard. "For me, yes. But there's a condition attached. I'll need time to verify certain details before it can be released." What kind of details? He studied my face for a second longer than necessary. "The kind that matter," he said carefully. "I'll be in touch." I watched him walk away. Questions stacking up in my chest. Why me? And what could possibly require verification after someone was already gone? Looking back now, that was the first crack in the story my family had built around me. I just didn't know yet that it would split everything open. To understand why I didn't question any of it that day, at the funeral, you need to know what the previous 10 years looked like. I was 22, junior year at State. Double major in business and communications. Dean's list. Internship lined up with a mid-sized consulting firm in Hartford. I had a plan. Law school after graduation. Then my mother was diagnosed with stage 1 breast cancer. The family meeting lasted 12 minutes. My father sat at the head of the table, my mother beside him, pale but composed. Victoria was 20, already accepted into an accelerated graduate program in biomedical research. The pride of the family. Someone needs to stay home and help your mother. My father said, Victoria can't interrupt her program. This is her future. Everyone looked at me. I didn't hesitate. I'll take a leave. That's what I did. I filled the gap. 2 years of chemo appointments, radiation schedules, insurance paperwork that felt designed to break people. I learned how to measure medication, how to clean vomit out of bathroom grout at 3 in the morning, how to hold a bucket steady without flinching. I worked nights at a warehouse, loading trucks to help with bills. I fixed the furnace when it failed. I mowed the lawn. I paid my own tuition fees until I couldn't anymore. Victoria sent flowers from campus and FaceTimed on Sundays. When my mother rang the bell signaling the end of treatment, the whole hospital clapped. It was a success story. 3 months later, I asked about going back to school. My father didn't even look up from the newspaper. You're 24 now. He said, you've been out too long. Be practical. Get a steady job. Help this family. Victoria graduated 4 years later. 60 guests. Catered dinner. Champagne toast. A banner that read Dr. Victoria Satan, PhD. I washed dishes until midnight. I remember standing at the sink while laughter spilled out from the dining room. My mother gave a speech about sacrifice and perseverance, about how hard it had been for all of us. No one mentioned that I never went back to school. Once, looking for a photo of Grandma for her birthday card, I found the family albums. Victoria had an entire volume dedicated to her achievements. Dance recitals, science fairs, graduation ceremonies. I counted 3 photos of myself, a baby picture, kindergarten, one Christmas snapshot where I was half out of frame. I asked Grandma about it once. We were sitting on her porch. Late afternoon light, catching dust in the air. She squeezed my hand and said something that didn't make sense at the time. Your mother carries a secret, Danny, and until she faces it, she'll keep punishing you instead of herself, punishing me for what I asked. She looked toward the house like the answer might be written in its windows. For something that was never yours to carry. I should have pushed. I didn't. By then, I'd already accepted the role. The reliable one. The steady one. The son who stayed behind, so the rest could rise. It never occurred to me that I hadn't been chosen because I was dependable. It was because I was expendable. The last real conversation I had with Grandma Ruth happened 2 weeks before she went into hospice. I was sitting at her kitchen table, tightening the loose hinge on one of her cabinet doors. She watched me the way she always did, not distracted. Not half listening, but fully present. Danny, she said quietly. Have you ever wondered why your mother looks at you the way she does? I kept working. She doesn't look at me anyway. That's exactly my point. The screwdriver paused in my hand. Grandma folded her napkin carefully. Buying time. Guilt changes people. It hardens them. Makes them rewrite stories so they don't have to face what they've done. What did she do? Her eyes softened. But there was something else there too. Regret. I can't tell you everything. She said. Not yet. Not yet. She reached across the table and covered my hand with hers. Her skin felt thinner than I remembered. If I told you now, it would break things you're not ready to see broken. But I need you to promise me something. What? When the truth comes to you, and it will, don't let it turn you bitter. You are not what they made you believe. I didn't understand. Not fully. I'm not broken. I said, more defensive than I meant to sound. I know. She replied firmly. But you've spent your whole life trying to prove you aren't. That landed harder than I expected. She squeezed my hand again. There's a difference between loyalty and silence. Daniel, one is strength. The other is fear. Whose fear? She didn't answer that. Instead, she stood up slowly and said, almost to herself, some secrets rot a house from the inside, and this one has been rotting for a long time. At the time, I thought she meant family tension. I didn't realize she meant me. 3 weeks before Thanksgiving, my phone rang at 7:02 a.m. I was halfway through my first cup of coffee before work when I saw the caller ID. Michael Bennett. Mr. Cian, he said when I answered. The 6-month holding period your grandmother requested has ended. The envelope is ready for release. My stomach tightened. Why 6 months? She was very specific. He replied. She wanted you to have time to grieve before facing what's inside. Facing, not receiving. Facing. I met him at his office that afternoon. The envelope was thicker than I expected. Cream-colored, sealed with red wax. My grandmother's handwriting across the front for Daniel, when you're ready to know the truth. Mr. Bennett cleared his throat. She left a message to be delivered verbally. He unfolded a small card. Read it when you're ready to face what I couldn't say while I was alive. I'm sorry it took me so long. I love you. Ruth. My hands felt colder than they should have as I took it. What's in it? I asked. She said only this. He deserves the truth. I drove home with the envelope on the passenger seat. It felt like something unstable, like it might detonate if I opened it at the wrong moment. For 2 days, I didn't touch it. Then Victoria posted her announcement. A professional maternity shoot. White dress. Golden hour lighting. Caption: Baby Seaton arriving soon. Our miracle. 300 comments. Hearts. Applause. My mother commented within seconds. Our perfect blessing. Something shifted in me. That night, I opened the envelope. Inside were 3 items. A handwritten letter, a certified DNA report from a private laboratory, a photocopy of my birth certificate with the father's name partially blacked out. I read the letter first. My darling Daniel, I'm sorry. I should have told you sooner. You are not Harold's biological son. The words didn't register at first. 2 years ago, I stopped guessing and sought proof. I collected samples discreetly. The results are enclosed. I unfolded the lab report. 0% probability of paternity. 0. Not low. Not unlikely. 0. I sat on my apartment floor. Papers spread around me like evidence in a case file. 32 years of distance. Of cold looks. Of being chosen to sacrifice. Suddenly, it made sense. Every time my father looked at me and saw something that didn't belong to him. Every time my mother flinched when I hugged her. Every time Victoria was prioritized and I was sidelined. I wasn't failing to win their approval. I was living proof of a lie. Grandma's letter continued. Your mother refused to tell me who your biological father is. I tried to find out. I couldn't. She guards that name with everything she has. I leaned back against the couch and stared at the ceiling. I had 2 choices. Fold everything back into the envelope. Go to Thanksgiving. Smile. Stay silent. Or bring the truth with me. I made copies that night. Not for revenge. For answers. Thanksgiving morning was cold and sharp. The kind of November day that looks harmless but cuts through your coat if you stand still too long. I parked behind Victoria's white SUV in my parents' driveway. The house looked staged for a catalog wreath on the door. Pumpkins on the porch. A wooden sign that said, Gather together. The envelope sat in my coat pocket. I told myself I wouldn't use it unless they forced me to. One more chance. My mother opened the door before I knocked. You're late. I'm 10 minutes early. I said an hour early. She turned and walked away. I closed the door myself. The dining table was extended to its full length. White china. Crystal glasses. 24 place settings. Handwritten name cards. I walked around the table once. 23 names. Not mine. Mom, I said carefully. Where's my seat? She adjusted the floral centerpiece without looking at me. We ran out of space. There are 24 settings. The last one is symbolic. Victoria appeared in the doorway. One hand resting on her stomach. 8 months pregnant. Glowing. Untouchable. We made a little card for the baby. She said lightly. Baby Seaton coming soon. I stared at the small handwritten card. My place had been given to someone not even born yet. You replaced me. I said, don't be dramatic. Victoria replied. It's cute. It's for the announcement. The envelope felt heavier against my chest. One more chance. I followed my mother into the kitchen. The door swung shut behind us. I need to talk to you. I said. Not today. She basted the turkey. The back turned. I dropped out of school for you. You dropped out because you weren't committed. You asked me to stay. Victoria had a future. So did I. She turned slowly. Eyes flat. You were good at helping. That's different. Good at helping. The words settled like dust in my lungs. Why have you treated me like I don't belong? I asked. Her jaw tightened. For half a second, something flickered there. Fear. I don't know what you're talking about. I think you do. The kitchen door opened. My father stood there with a glass of whiskey. Everything all right? Fine? My mother said smoothly. Daniel was just going to greet guests. I looked at my father, the man who had never hugged me, never told me he was proud of me. I don't have a seat at the table, I said. He swirled the ice in his glass. Your mother handles arrangements. And you're okay with that? He paused too long. You're your mother's son, he said. The emphasis hit differently. Not our. Is there something I should know? I asked. Drop it. He replied quietly. Today is about Victoria. It always was. By 3 o'clock, the house was full. 23 relatives. Aunts, uncles, cousins who misremembered my name. Air kiss. Polite nods. I stood near the kitchen doorway, watching them settle into their assigned seats. My father tapped his fork against his glass. I'm grateful for this family, he began. For my wife Diane, who made this meal possible. For our daughter Victoria, who makes us proud every day. He raised his glass toward her. Applause. And for our soon-to-be grandchild. No mention of me. Victoria stood, radiant in a cream dress. We have an announcement, she said, smiling. We're naming the baby after Grandma Ruth. The room erupted. My mother's smile flickered just once. Then she clapped. They were honoring the one person who had actually protected me. The irony almost made me laugh. Then Victoria lifted her cider glass again. And I want to thank my brother Daniel, she said. For a split second, something inside me lifted. He stayed home when Mom was sick, so I could finish school. She continued. Every family needs someone steady, someone dependable. The foundation we all stand on. Foundation. The thing people stand on. Daniel's always been reliable. She finished. You can count on him. The room murmured approvingly. I stood there with a dish towel over my shoulder like staff. Reliable. Dependable. Invisible. After the main course, I carried out Grandma Ruth's pecan pie. Golden crust. Cinnamon in memory. What's that? My mother asked sharply. Grandma's recipe. I didn't approve that. There's room for both desserts. I said, take it back to the kitchen. It's her recipe. Her voice rose. You don't have a seat at this table. What makes you think your pie belongs here? 23 faces turned toward me. I set the pie down slowly. 32 years. That's how long I'd tried to understand what I'd done wrong. I looked at my father, then at my mother, and I felt something inside me settle. The envelope in my coat wasn't burning anymore. It was steady. Ready? The room was quiet in that unnatural way large rooms get when something irreversible is about to happen. My mother was still standing. My father's glass hovered midair. Victoria's smile had stiffened. Confused. You don't have a seat at this table. My mother repeated. Louder now. There's no room for disappointments. I let the silence stretch. Then I reached into my coat pocket. I brought something, I said evenly. My mother's face drained of color. I walked to the head of the table and placed the envelope directly in front of my father. It covered his gold-trimmed plate, covered the space where he carved the turkey every year. Happy Thanksgiving, I said. I finally understand why you never treated me like your son. No one moved. The DNA results are inside. Victoria laughed nervously. Daniel, what are you doing? I didn't look at her. I kept my eyes on my father. The report says there's a 0% probability you're my biological father. A fork clattered against china. Someone gasped. My father didn't touch the envelope at first. He just stared at it, like it might disappear if he waited long enough. Open it, I said quietly. My mother stepped forward. This is ridiculous. You're not going to humiliate this family over some fantasy. Open it, I repeated. My father's hands trembled as he broke the seal. He pulled out the lab report. His eyes scanned the page once. Then again. I watched the color leave his face in stages. Probability of paternity. He read. Voice hollow. 0%. The room exploded into whispers. That's fake. Victoria's voice cracked. He's making it up. It was arranged by Grandma Ruth through her attorney. I said. Aunt Margaret was present when the samples were collected. Every head turned toward Aunt Margaret. She stood slowly. Ruth had suspicions for years. She said calmly. 2 years before she passed. She sought confirmation. My mother slammed her hand against the table. This is insanity. I am not going to sit here and be accused by my own son. I'm not your son. The words fell heavy. Final. My father flinched like he'd been struck. Harold, my mother hissed. Say something. He didn't look at her. Instead, he looked at me. Really looked at me. For the first time in my life. When did you know? I asked him. The room held its breath. He swallowed. You were 5, he said. My heart slowed. Not sped up. Slowed. You fell off your bike. Needed stitches. The doctor mentioned your blood type. Oh, negative. He cleared his throat. Diane and I are both a positive. A ripple moved through the guests. I looked it up. He continued. It didn't add up. You knew when I was 5. I repeated. I suspected, he said weakly. I didn't want to know for certain. So you chose distance instead. He didn't argue. You watched her treat me like I didn't belong. I continued. You let me drop out of school. You let me carry everything. Why? His voice cracked. Because Victoria was mine. The bluntness stunned even him. I protected what was mine. He finished. There it was. Blood over fairness. Comfort over truth. My mother broke into loud, dramatic sobs. I made one mistake, she cried. One mistake 33 years ago. I was young, I was scared, and I paid for it. I said calmly. Every day. She shook her head wildly. You don't understand what it did to me. Every time I looked at you, I saw your guilt. I finished. She froze. You punished me so you wouldn't have to face yourself. That's not true. Aunt Margaret's voice cut through. You denied him love. Diane. That's worse than neglect. That's deliberate. Victoria stood abruptly. This is family dynamics. It's complicated. No, I said. It's simple. I was a reminder, and instead of dealing with the lie, you all decided I was the problem. My father lowered his head. I was a lie, he admitted. I should have demanded the truth decades ago. You should have protected me, I said. He nodded once. Yes. I turned back to my mother. Who is he? Her crying stopped instantly. Don't. Who is my biological father? I will not drag another man into this. Another man. The phrasing wasn't accidental. You're protecting him. I said, I'm protecting this family. This family. I gestured at the room. You already destroyed it. Murmurs grew louder. Relatives avoided her eyes. The narrative she'd built for 32 years was collapsing in real time. Is he alive? I pressed. Does he know I exist? She stood rigid. I will take that name to my grave. The finality in her tone told me she meant it. I felt something unexpected then. Not rage. Clarity. You don't get to decide that anymore. I said quietly. There are databases. Genealogy sites. Private investigators. I will find him. Her eyes widened. You can't. I can. The power dynamic had shifted. Completely. For 32 years. I'd been reacting. Now I was moving forward. I picked up Grandma Ruth's pie from the table. Enjoy the rest of your dinner, I said. No one tried to stop me. As I reached the doorway, I turned back once. 23 relatives sat frozen around the table. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the outsider. They were, and the silence belonged to them. I made it halfway down the hallway before Victoria caught up with me. Daniel. Wait. Her heels clicked against hardwood. She grabbed my arm. Not hard, but desperate. You can't just walk out after that. I looked down at her hand until she let go. What exactly would you like me to stay for? I asked. Her mascara had started to run. The polished composure was gone. For the first time all day. She looked scared instead of glowing. You just blew up everything, she said. Mom and Dad's marriage. Thanksgiving. My announcement. My existence blew that up. I replied evenly. Not me saying it out loud. That's not fair. Neither was dropping out of school. She flinched. Mom was sick, she said. I know. I was there. Silence stretched between us. You could have told me, she said finally. Before. Privately. And what would you have done? She opened her mouth. Closed it. I don't know. That's the problem. Her voice lowered. You're still my brother. The word hung there. Brother. We grew up in the same house. I said, but you grew up loved. That's not the same childhood. That's not my fault. No. I agreed. It isn't. For a second, something softened in her expression. Something almost human. But you benefited from it. I continued. You never once asked why I was treated differently. You never said, this isn't right. You just accepted it. I thought that was normal, she whispered. For you. It was, She folded her arms protectively over her stomach. This was supposed to be my day. There it was. Not the truth. Not me. Her day. You've had 32 years of days. I said quietly. Birthdays. Graduations. Toasts. Applause. Her face crumpled. I didn't know. She insisted. I believe you. I said. And I did. She wasn't cruel. She was comfortable. Comfort makes people blind. Are we done? She asked. Voice small now. I thought about that. About shared bedrooms. Car rides to school. Silent dinners. About how she never defended me. I don't hate you. I said carefully. But I'm done being the background character in your life. Tears slid down her cheeks. I don't know how to fix this. You don't. I said. That's not your job. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. Will I ever see you again? I considered it. Not out of spite. Out of honesty. Maybe. I said. When you're ready to see me as a person instead of the family utility. The front door was only a few steps away now. Cold air waited on the other side. Daniel. She said one last time. I paused. For what it's worth. She whispered. I never thought you were a disappointment. I nodded once. That makes one of us. Then I opened the door and stepped outside. I was halfway down the driveway when I heard the door open again. Daniel. Aunt Margaret hurried toward me. Coat half-buttoned, breath visible in the cold air. She wasn't built for drama, but she moved with urgency. I stopped. You don't have to go through this alone, she said softly. The porch light behind her cast long shadows across the driveway. Inside, I could still hear muffled voices, confusion, damage control, panic. I didn't plan to do it like that. I admitted. I just hit a limit. No, she corrected gently. Your mother hit it 32 years ago. You just stopped absorbing it. That landed. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. Ruth knew this might happen. My chest tightened. What do you mean? She didn't just test for proof. Aunt Margaret said. She started looking. For him, she nodded. She hired someone, quietly. A private investigator who specializes in genealogical tracing and old employment records. The cold felt sharper suddenly. She narrowed it down to 3 men. Aunt Margaret continued. All connected to your mother around the time she got pregnant. 3. One passed away in 2015. I absorbed that. A dead possibility. One moved overseas in the late 90s. Lives in Portugal now. Married. 2 adult children. And the third, she hesitated. The third still lives here. My heartbeat slowed. Not sped up. We're about 20 minutes away. The distance felt unreal. 20 minutes. 32 years. Does he know? I asked. No, she said firmly. Ruth never contacted him directly. She didn't want to disrupt another life without certainty. Do you know his name? She shook her head. Ruth wouldn't say it out loud. Not even to me. She said if Diane ever found out how far she'd gotten, she'd destroy everything. That sounded accurate. Aunt Margaret reached into her purse and pulled out a folded piece of paper. She wanted you to have this if things went the way she feared. I unfolded it. A name. A phone number. A company logo. Private investigator, genealogical and paternity research. She kept this separate from the envelope. Aunt Margaret said, in case you needed more than proof. I stared at the paper. It felt heavier than the DNA report had. Why didn't she tell me while she was alive? She was afraid you'd confront Diane before she was ready. Margaret said, and she was afraid your father would implode without preparation. He still did. Yes. She agreed quietly, but now the truth isn't buried with her. We stood in silence for a moment. Daniel, she added, is softer now. Whatever you find, whoever he is, it doesn't change who you are. It changes something. I said, it answers a question. She corrected. That's different. I folded the paper carefully and slipped it into my coat pocket beside the copies of the DNA report. 3 possibilities. 1 dead. 1 across an ocean. 1 close enough to drive to before midnight. The wind moved through the trees above us. Are you going to call? She asked. Not tonight. I said. Good. She placed a hand on my shoulder, steady. Grounding. For the first time in your life. You get to choose the timing. That was new. Choice. Inside the house. Raised voices escalated. For once, it wasn't about me. I walked to my car slowly. Pie on the passenger seat. This investigator's number in my pocket. The story I'd been handed for 32 years was over. The one I was about to write hadn't started yet. 1 week after Thanksgiving, my phone buzzed while I was at work. A text from Aunt Margaret. He filed this morning. No explanation needed. My father had filed for divorce. 35 years of marriage reduced to paperwork and a courthouse timestamp. I stared at the message longer than I expected to. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel satisfaction. I felt the weight of something collapsing that had been unstable long before I understood why. Over the next few days, updates came in fragments. My father moved into a downtown hotel, hired an attorney, a good one. My mother, apparently, was telling anyone who would listen that the DNA test was fabricated, that I'd coordinated some kind of attack out of jealousy, that she was the victim of a vindictive son. But this time, the narrative didn't stick. Relatives who had whispered about me for years were suddenly calling to check in. Uncle Thomas wanted coffee, said he may have misjudged me. Aunt Barbara sent a long message apologizing for believing things she should have questioned. Believed what? That I was unstable, unmotivated, difficult. My mother had planted those seeds carefully for decades. Now they were uprooting themselves. It wasn't vindication. It was exposure. 3 days later, my phone rang with a number I hadn't seen in years. Harold. I let it go to voicemail. The transcript read, Daniel, I don't expect forgiveness. We need to talk. There are things you deserve to hear from me directly. Deserve. Interesting word choice. I didn't call back. Not immediately. Instead, I met Aunt Margaret for coffee that Saturday. The family's split, she said quietly. Some are supporting your father. Some are still defending Diane. Most are just embarrassed they didn't see it sooner. They saw what they were shown. I replied, yes. She nodded, and now they're seeing what was hidden. My phone buzzed again. Victoria. 7th call that week. I declined it. Margaret raised an eyebrow. Cold. She's not sorry for what happened. I said, she's sorry she's uncomfortable. That's fair. Later that afternoon, Harold showed up at the bookstore. I saw him through the front window before the bell above the door rang. He looked smaller, coat hanging looser, eyes tired. Daniel, he said, voice rough. Can we talk? I led him to the back corner near the biographies. Appropriate. Considering. He didn't waste time. I suspected when you were 5. He repeated. But I never wanted confirmation, because confirmation would have required action. And you preferred inaction. I said, yes. The honesty was clinical. Late. But clean. I told myself I was being practical. He continued. Protecting the stability of the household. Protecting Victoria. And sacrificing me. I said. He didn't argue. Yes. No defense. No excuse. I watched her treat you differently, he added. And I justified it because somewhere in the back of my mind, I believed you weren't mine. The sentence hung in the air between us. Not yours. That wasn't neutrality. I said quietly. That was complicity. He nodded. I know. Silence settled. He reached into his coat and pulled out a worn photograph. I found this after Thanksgiving, he said, in an old box from when your mother and I were first married. He slid it across the table. A company picnic. Early 90s. My mother laughing beside a dark-haired man in a blue shirt, his hand almost touching her back. James Martin, Harold said. He worked at her firm. They were close before you were born. I studied the man's face. Something about the eyes felt familiar. Does he know? I asked. I don't think so. Why are you giving me this? He exhaled slowly. Because it's the only useful thing I can do now. Not redemption. Contribution. I picked up the photograph. The past had cracked open. And for the first time, the adults who shaped my life were no longer pretending they hadn't seen it coming. A month after Thanksgiving, I turned 33. It was the first birthday I can remember that didn't feel like an obligation. Aunt Margaret baked a cake, shaped like a stack of books, and insisted on lighting 33 candles, even though the smoke alarm nearly objected. We laughed about it. Real laughter. Not the polite, measured kind I'd grown used to at family events. I moved out of my apartment near my parents' neighborhood 2 weeks later. Not dramatically. Not angrily. Quietly. I found a studio above a bakery on Oak Street. It smells like rosemary in the mornings and sugar at night. The walls are bare except for one framed photo me and Grandma Ruth at my 8th birthday party. I'm missing a front tooth and grinning like the world makes sense. I enrolled in community college. Evening classes. Business administration. Sitting in a classroom at 33 is humbling. Most of my classmates are 10 years younger. Some look at me like I'm the TA. I don't care. For the first time, I'm studying because I want to. Not because I'm trying to earn someone's approval. Not because I'm trying to prove I'm not broken. The bookstore gave me more hours. Then a promotion. Assistant manager, Mrs. Patterson, the owner, pulled me aside one afternoon. "I've wanted to offer you this for years," she said, "but you always seemed hesitant." Hesitant how? Like you didn't think you deserved more. She wasn't wrong. For most of my life, I operated on survival settings. Stay small. Stay useful. Don't cause friction. Now I'm learning something else. Take up space. Victoria had her baby last week. A girl. They named her Ruth. My mother called to tell me. Her voice was carefully neutral, controlled. "Your niece was born. 7 pounds, 4 ounces. Is she healthy?" I asked. "Yes." A pause. "Victoria would like you to visit." "I'll think about it," I said. There was no guilt in my chest after I hung up. That's new. The investigator's number is saved in my phone. I've spoken to her twice now. She confirmed what Harold's photo suggested. James Martin, 62, retired architect. Lives 15 minutes away. Never married. No children. No one who would be blindsided except him. Some days, I sit in my car outside Maple Street and just watch the houses. I don't get out. I don't knock. Not yet. Because this part isn't about revenge. It's about identity. I've spent months untangling something bigger than DNA. Who am I if I'm not the disappointment? Who am I if I'm not the sacrificial son? Who am I if I'm not defined by someone else's? Lie Grandma's letter stays on my kitchen table. The paper is soft at the folds now. I've read it so many times I can almost recite it. But there's a postscript I missed the first night. Small handwriting at the bottom. P. Liz. Daniel. You were never a mistake. You were never something to hide. You were the bravest person in that house. Even when you didn't know it. Don't let their shame become your identity. You are allowed to be loved. You are allowed to be seen. Whoever your father is, he doesn't define you. You are already whole. Already whole. That line took time to sink in. For years, I believed the opposite. That I was missing something. That if I tried harder, achieved more, and stayed quieter, I'd finally unlock their approval. But the approval was never locked. It was withheld. There's a difference. I still have hard days. Nights where I replay conversations and wonder what childhood would have looked like if someone had chosen courage sooner. But the difference now is this: I'm building something that isn't dependent on them. A career I care about. An education I chose. Relationships based on truth, not obligation. The anger is still there sometimes, but it doesn't run the show anymore. I don't need the table I was excluded from. I bought my own. 4 chairs. All of them mine to fill. This morning, my phone buzzed at 8:17 a.m. Unknown number. I already knew who it was before I picked it up. The investigator had warned me the night before. I made contact, she'd said. He was surprised. Shocked. Honestly, he asked for time. Then he asked for your number. I hadn't slept much after that. Now the message sat on my screen. Hello, Daniel. I don't know if this is welcome, but I was recently told that I might be your biological father. I'm not sure how to begin this conversation. If you're open to talking, I would like to meet. James, I've read it at least 50 times. I haven't responded. Not yet. I'm sitting at my kitchen table, my table with coffee cooling beside me and Grandma Ruth's recipe book open to pot roast for tonight. Aunt Margaret is coming over. She insists on bringing wine even though she knows I don't drink much. The apartment smells like rosemary and bread from downstairs. On my fridge is a photo from last week, me and Margaret at the bookstore after my promotion. We look ridiculous. Happy. There's a version of me from 6 months ago who would have answered that text immediately. Who would have needed the validation. Needed confirmation that I wasn't unwanted twice. That version of me is quieter now. Not gone, just steadier. I don't know what James will turn out to be. Maybe he's kind. Maybe he's flawed. Maybe he's another man who chose comfort over truth. But this time, I'm not walking into it desperate. I'm walking into it as someone who already knows he's whole. For 32 years, I lived inside someone else's story. The disappointing son, the expendable one, the reminder of a mistake. Now I get to decide what this next chapter looks like. The text is still unopened fully. I can swipe it away, or I can reply. But whatever I choose, it will be my choice. Not my mother's secret. Not my father's cowardice. Not a family table with one chair missing. Me, I'm finally holding the pen. And this time, I'm writing my own name into the story. This story is created by the Boundaries and Bloodlines team for entertainment purposes only. It is not advice. Do not replicate actions in real life under any circumstances.